Hi, in this RC Gadget Talk video, we'll be installing and programming the Istone All 6-axis stabilizer using the Detrum 3-in-1 programming card in this Dynam P-47 airplane. Let's get started. Before we get into the details of installing the Istone All 6-axis stabilizer, let's talk a little bit about what it actually is. It's an independent or separate stabilizer that you can install in your model when your receiver doesn't have a built-in stabilizer. The stabilizer is programmable by using the 3-in-1 programming card from Detrum. This stabilizer is interesting in that it can take inputs from a variety of receivers. So, if you're using an S-bus connection with a Futaba receiver, you can connect to the S-bus port. If you're using a DSM receiver or PWM receiver, they'll work fine too. The Istone All is a small component that comes with a couple of interesting wires, including a wire that has 3 inputs with a normal servo connector on one to plug into the stabilizer, and 3 single wire servo connectors to plug into the aileron, elevator, and rudder output of the receiver. Unlike older stabilizers, the Istone is controlled electronically, so there aren't any potentiometers you'll need a screwdriver to twist. So, let's take a look at this in the airplane and see how easy it is to add a stabilizer to one of your airplanes. So in this shot, we've got the Istone stabilizer mounted here on some of the foam that connects the left and right side of this P-47. I've got it just a little bit off center for a reason I'll describe to you in just a second, but it's pretty close to being on the center line, and it's also very close to being at the CG. I've got a close-up picture where we can see what we've got connected here to the Istone stabilizer, and on this end what we have is the wire that controls the mode. So when I change the switch position on my transmitter, I can change the mode of the stabilizer. And then the other one is this 3-wire combo wire that I'll point out to you here with a picture of the receiver, and you can see how those single wire connectors connect to each the aileron, the elevator, and the rudder. Now, there's a couple of things of note about this receiver, and that is that it can be mounted vertically, it can be mounted upside down with the label facing down, for example, or it can be labeled with the label facing up. So that gives us left, right, up, and down. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out to you, and let me move these wires around just a little bit. So the data cable for the stabilizer is on this side. It's the right-hand side of the case if the label is facing up. And it's got a straight plug, as you can see. So I had to take out a little bit of foam out of the edge to give that a little bit of extra room. So it might be worth looking on Amazon to see if they have a 90-degree micro USB adapter that would make this easier to use, so you don't need quite the room horizontally. The other thing, of course, is if you were going to mount it with that receptacle facing down, then it would be very difficult for you to program the stabilizer using the 3-in-1 card. So just be mindful of that as you decide where you're going to mount your stabilizer in your airplane. Because your situation in your airplane is likely to be different, I think that's probably all I'm going to talk about there. Next, let's take a look at the programming aspects of this using the 3-in-1 programming card. Okay, so now I have the programming card plugged into that black cable. I've taken the propeller off the airplane since I'm here in the workshop, and I've got it powered on. I plugged the battery in, and I have my transmitter on, so the radio is in contact with the model. And then here is the menu on the Istone stabilizer, and there are 9 things. These you can move up and down the menu or choice list, the up and down buttons. There's a carriage return or an angled arrow here, which is the select button, and then there's a curved arrow here, similar to you might see on your TV's remote control for reversing something, and so that's just the back button. So those are the buttons that I'm going to be using to control this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down, and the instructions in the programming card say if you're doing this for the first time with your model, to run down to the couple of things at the bottom of the list. And so first, to make sure that you're programming a wing type that's normal. This is a typical airplane with wings and tail. It's not a V-tail. It's not a delta wing, so it's normal. I go up. The mounting direction in this case is up. I talked about the various choices with your mounting direction already, but just to see those, I can go then using up and down buttons. I can mount it down, I can mount it right, I can mount it left. In this case, I have it mounted up, so I'll select up and then move back. And then I'm going to go back to the top and work my way down. So the fly mode is choices. When it's highlighted, you can see some little broken bars to that arrow, so I'll select it. And so this is where I select the switch controls for the stabilizer. So I have it selected on a particular switch on my radio. I think I've got it, if I remember right, selected on switch SD. So the D switch is a 3-position switch. And so I have switch position 1 is off, so that if things go wrong with the stabilizer while it's airborne, I can flick a switch and turn it off. Switch position 2 is normal, which is just my normal gyro assist in windy conditions. And switch position 3 is my auto recovery switch. So if I lose orientation, I can flick that switch, and given enough altitude, my model will return to straight and level flight. So those are the fly modes that you can specify, and you can change those around to fit your own particular preference. So I'm going to back out of this. Now I've got several gain position switches here. I've got yaw gain, roll gain, and pitch gain. And those are basically the kinds of inputs, or the amount of input that those respective gyros will have input into the model. So let's look at that just quickly. So you can see I've got it set for normal. That is my servos are moving the way I would expect them. I don't have them reversed or anything. And coming out of the box, the Istone All comes with 50-50 in terms of angle gain and rate gain. So what you'll want to do is fly it and then come back and make some adjustments. So if the airplane was a little twitchy, if you could see the tail fluttering back and forth, that would be an indication of too much gain. Or if it was bouncing around and you couldn't hardly tell that there was any stabilization happening, you could increase the gain so that the inputs from the gyros would be amplified a little bit. And so you can do that then for the yaw, for the roll, and the pitch. And each of those choices do the same thing in their respective axes. Next is the roll offset and the pitch offset. And these are set to help the auto recovery mode know what is level flight. And so you can check these in a couple of different ways. One is on the ground. You can turn the switch on your transmitter to auto recovery, and in that position, your ailerons and your elevator, the pitch and the roll, should be smooth or neutral, aligned with the flight controls, how they are when you have the airplane trimmed up flying in level flight. In the air, you can also change it, or you can at least assess it in the air by turning it to auto recovery and then looking at the airplane. And if it's rolling left or right, or if it's climbing or descending in the auto recovery mode, then you can come back, plug in your controller, and add offset to the stabilizer to get the airplane to fly level when it's in the auto recovery mode. And so here you can pitch upset, you can go minus, or you can go positive. That's going to equate to left and right, basically. And so again, you can visually get a sense of what that is by looking at the flight control on the ground when the switch is selected to auto recovery, or you can check it out airborne and see what kind of movement the airplane is making, and then make the corrections when you get the airplane back down on the ground. We've already checked the mount direction, we've looked at the wing type, and then Switch number 9 has to do with whether you're using the data connection to a DSM or Spectrum type receiver. And since I'm not going to do that and I don't have one of those receivers to demonstrate for you, you'll just need to read about that in the instructions where it's explained pretty well. So those are the 9 items in the menu for programming your Istone All Stabilizer. It's pretty easy to do. And really the only thing that you're going to want to watch for is having room to plug this cable in, because it is a heavy-duty cable. It should be durable and it's kind of stiff, but it's not going to squeeze into small places. So be mindful of that as you put the stabilizer in whatever airplane that you're going to be using it in. Now the last thing I want to point out to you is the little LED on the Istone All 6-axis stabilizer, and that's right up here, as you can see, and it's glowing red. And as you might expect, red means off. So I have it in the number 1 position for my 3-position switch. When I move my 3-position switch to center, it turns it on, where it turns blue. That's the normal mode for the stabilizer, where it gives me, some support on windy, bumpy days. And then the 3rd position is that auto recovery mode, and you'll see that the color changes again when I move to position 3. It turns to kind of a greenish, light teal color, and you can hear the servos starting to chatter a little bit as they moved to try to center the airplane from this very slight angle I have on the stand where I'm doing my photography. So auto recovery, normal, and the stabilizer is off. Okay, so I'm out at the field, and I want to check the pitch and roll offset, which are the 2 settings for the auto recovery mode, so that if I initiate auto recovery, it'll initiate into a straight and level flight. And so you can see I've got this down on its 3-point stance, tail dragger, so the tail end is low, and I've got the 3-in-1 programming card plugged in, and so I'm going to flick the switch on the transmitter to send it to auto recovery, and we'll see what happens. Now, instead of watching the flight control, which is kind of bright here in the sunshine, we're going to take a look at the servo, because of course the servo is what's going to move that. So let me move in, focus in on the servo. I hope you can see it. It's kind of in a shadow. And now I'm going to set it to auto recovery. So I'll move it. And did you see that move? It moved and it pulled the elevator down to lower the nose. Flick it back and you can see it move. And so you would expect that with this kind of attitude. Now let me put it on this coffee cup and in what is straight and level flight attitude and see what we've got there. So you can see now with the airplane in a straight and level attitude, we'll go back and check that servo again and see if it moves this time. And it's not moving, which means in terms of pitch, the airplane is set well for that auto recovery mode. So when I get it airborne, I'll give it a try and see if it doesn't work the way it should. Now, the other thing is the airplane sitting straight and level. This time we will take a peek at the ailerons, which will be the roll setting. And you can see I'm flicking the switch back and forth between auto recovery and normal gyro, and they are not moving. So the 0 and the 0 setting in the 3-in-1 card should work for this to be in level flight. So let's finish getting it ready to fly and see what it does. So let's wrap this up. The stabilizer was easy to install and a snap to program using the Detrum 3-in-1 programming card. After having flown it, it seemed to work well with the settings discussed earlier in this video. When I flew it, it wasn't a particularly windy day, but switching through the modes while airborne didn't cause the airplane to jump around at all. As you saw when I programmed the auto recovery settings during the pre-flight, the 0 settings worked just fine. When I had the airplane flying hands-off, flicking the switch to the auto recovery mode had no impact on the model, which meant the pitch and roll offset settings were perfect. All in all, the Istone All Stabilizer is worth the money, and even with the extra $20 for the programming card, it's a pretty good value. As the cost of programming card is spread among more than one stabilizer, the overall value proposition improves. The review sample of both the Istone All Stabilizer and the programming card were provided by Bitco Hobby, and I thank them for the opportunity to report on those products. Hey, if you found the video helpful, please click on the thumbs up icon below and consider subscribing to the RC Planeviews channel. Click on the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. Thanks for watching.